One of the most mystifying moves Sega would make during the Saturn's lifetime was its fascination with trying to copy the success certain games had on its rival's console. Sega was already developing and publishing fighting games like Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers for the Saturn, not to mention they were sitting on a few more IPs that could easily have been pulled from their back catalog if they needed more. Hell, they even actively put a stop to projects like Eternal Champions out of fear it would impact the success of their Japanese developed titles. So the fact that they sought to publish a port of Battle Arena Toshinden, the PlayStation 3D fighter that gained popularity almost solely because of its textured mapped visuals in the early days of the 5th generation, bordered on shocking. Yet they did it, rebadging it Battle Arena Toshinden Remix and adding some extra story content nobody asked for. It was developed by Nextech, and though they mostly got the gameplay similar enough, the visuals took a massive hit in quality. The backgrounds were now totally two-dimensional, and the textured mapping on the fighters was nowhere near as smooth. In effect, one of the only reasons anyone had cared about this on the PlayStation was now gone. To make matters even more confusing, Sega's own Virtua Fighter 2 looked infinitely superior, leaving you with nothing but questions about Sega's thinking and strategy. Whatever was going on behind the scenes, Sega was again part of the making of the sequel to Battle Arena Toshinden Remix, called Battle Arena Toshinden Ultimate Revenge Attack, or URA for short. In this episode, we are going to take a look at that and see how it turned out. Was it another failed port of a so-so game, or did it turn things around and finally get it right? Let's find out. Toshinden URA is based on the PlayStation release Battle Arena Toshinden 2. Nextech was again at the helm of this port, and they made numerous changes to the work that was done originally by the developer Tamsoft. The story has been completely retooled here and turned into a murder mystery. Fighters from all over the world are disappearing, and no one knows why or who is doing it. There is a sub-story of one of the fighters creating a robot that is meant to be a peacekeeper for the world, but that robot is stolen. Each fighter is connected to these events in some way, which is broken down further if you check out the instruction manual. The gameplay from here is still pretty much what you either loved or hated from the original. There are light and heavy attacks for your kicks and weapons, dodge buttons for left and right, and 2 buttons dedicated for your special moves. Double tapping forward or away from your opponent executes a dash, which can also be used with the dodge. You can pounce on a downed opponent, and you have a series of recoveries if you are knocked down. Press dodge while you're down and you'll roll left or right to get up. Press toward or away from the opponent to roll in that direction, or press up to jump upwards as you recover. There are also what the game calls overdrive and secret attacks. Overdrives use the bar at the bottom of the screen. Once full, a powerful overdrive can be used to help you in battle. Secret attacks are used as a last-ditch effort to survive a defeat. Once your life bar gets low enough and starts to flash, you have access to your secret attack. Nail it, and it can turn the battle around completely. When you fire up Toshinden URA, there are 3 main modes you can choose to play. There's the one-player game, that's your story mode and has an ending and the potential to face up to 3 different bosses. The versus human option is your multiplayer mode. The versus computer option is sort of your practice mode, where you can face any of the computer fighters you select. In the options mode, you can choose the difficulty, 1 being easy and 8 being hard. The timer, the number of rounds, the strength of the attacks, the guard type, and the camera can all be adjusted as well. If you don't like the default button layout, you can even change that.
Get through them!
Sadly, the visuals of Toshinden URA are a mixed bag despite being a late 1996 release, 2 years into the life of the platform. Again, the texture and polygon work comes off less impressive than the PlayStation original. backdrops are now completely two-dimensional, and the polygons on the fighters are less robust. It isn't so much the game looks terrible, because in all reality it doesn't, but it's nowhere near the technical showpieces that Sega's own in-house developed projects were. This was not Virtua Fighter 2, and it lacked the added cages and VDP2 enhanced arenas of Fighting Vipers and Last Bronx. I was also extremely unimpressed with the animation. It runs at 30 frames per second, but the actual movement of the fighters range from jerky to downright spastic. This is exacerbated by the dodging mechanic, which sends the fighters in odd directions that can take a few seconds to line back up. Get a couple of fighters that are constantly dodging, dashing, and jumping, and watching a match play out can be a real test of your patience. The presentation around the gameplay is also low budget and lacks any imagination at all. The fighter select screen is a simple rotary of blocky two-dimensional images that looks terrible and light years behind the competition. The intro movie is similarly disappointing, as is the ending, which is a wall of text that goes into no real detail about the individual characters, leaving you to assume a lot. Toshinden URA doesn't have the worst visuals you'll see on the Saturn, but when you have fighting games that already look better, what the hell is the point? Stick this beside the PlayStation game it's spun off of, and it really leaves you thinking the Saturn absolutely butchered it. Despite a higher resolution, the downgrade every place else resulted in a product that gave no one a single reason to care about it, and that was only the beginning of its issues. Sound in a fighting game is often a big part of its appeal. For a moment, close your eyes and think about your favorite game in the genre, and you can hear its soundtrack in your head. Nothing is really wrong with the sound and music in Toshinden URA, but it also doesn't really stand out as something to remember. Most of what is here is serviceable and matches the stage it's paired with, but I captured well over 2 hours of gameplay for this review, and I can't recall a single one grabbing me as something I'd listen to outside the game. Let's have some examples to see if you agree. Despite my thoughts on the visuals of Toshinden URA, the graphics will look good enough to many of you. The sound, again, may not be as gripping as you want it to be, but it's not bad, and gets the job done in most cases. Where Toshinden URA really falls down, however, is its gameplay. And when I say fall, I mean a full faceplant that never recovers. The jerky animation I mentioned earlier really plays havoc with the physics. You get hit by stuff that is nowhere near you. Some moves that look nasty take barely any life, while others that look benign can decimate your life bar. There's also a big problem with the camera keeping up with the action. It will leave you at an angle where your attacks constantly miss for far longer than it should. There is also a huge problem of being knocked down. You stay on the ground much longer than you should, which means a pounce attack or some other damage is guaranteed on the harder settings. If that wasn't enough, you'll find moves that miss regularly despite making clear contact. This happens with low and ground attacks constantly. I mean, everything about the way this plays is an absolute mess. There's also some serious balancing issues here. Some secret attacks are so overpowered and hit such a large portion of the screen, they are absolutely impossible to avoid. Overall, it's not broken, and it's certainly worth a laugh in multiplayer with a few friends. But this is not something you are going to want to return to again and again for its rock-solid mechanics. The low-budget presentation and the lack of a compelling story just pile on top of the problems. It really leaves Toshinden URA in a lonely place. It's not anywhere near as well done as Sega's 3D fighters. It even sits pretty low on the totem pole of third-party offerings. It really does make you question Sega's wisdom here. If they were going to publish this, you think they would have commissioned some explosive BDP2 effects and demanded gameplay that held up better. Finally, the game is incredibly easy on most settings. Since you can map your special attacks to one button, you can spam your most powerful moves at will. The overdrive and secret attacks are easy to pull off as well. On normal and below, you'll walk through the AI with little issue, while the hardest setting just gets you an AI that cheats its ass off to win. There's no in between, and that leaves you with an average looking and sounding game that just doesn't have enough to hold your attention for very long. Toshinden URA was a game that was absolutely hammered in the gaming press at the time of its release. Electronic Gaming Monthly started the party by pretty much asking why this existed in the first place. They even went as far as to say the Saturn could have made it a very good looking game but didn't, leaving us with another unimpressive PlayStation port. The GamePro review was short and patronizing. Again, the shortcomings of the first game were brought up, and a ton of disbelief that Sega and Nextech did it again. They weren't playing around, grading the fun factor a 0.5 out of 5, and basically saying it was irredeemable. Next Generation magazine was brutally honest in their assessment. They made the point that once the visuals are taken out of the equation for Toshinden, there's little left to care about. Their final sentence said it all: it had no chance. Even the UK official Sega Saturn magazine, a publication famous for being easy on the worst of games, had almost nothing positive to say about it. Their summation was short and painful. Why bother? The funny thing about this game is that I hadn't played it seriously in so long, I didn't remember it being this bad. So much so, if you had inquired about it a few weeks ago, I would have told you it was an okay fighter. But sitting down with this, the more I played, the more the memories came flooding back about why it ended up on my ignore list in the first place. The best I can recommend is this: play this game here and there and you can find some enjoyment in it, more so with a friend. But any long-term appeal will be quickly smashed by its shallow gameplay, dull presentation, and an overall feeling of wasting your time. There are better 3D fighters on the Saturn, and even if those didn't appeal to you, you are better off playing this as the PlayStation original. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.